Good afternoon, Mr. Sanders. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with our students from the University of West Georgia. To kick it off, do you mind just kind of sharing your background and what led you to, specifically in facilities, obviously?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Dr. Higgs, for having me. It's certainly a pleasure. I have 3 degrees from West Georgia. It was West Georgia College back in the days. I'm an original Brave, not a Wolf, but I am a proud graduate of West Georgia. Again, thank you for having me. I am a retired educator after 30 years of serving various school systems in a number of roles. Obviously, it began as a teacher, then moved into administration, where I was an assistant principal at high school level, then became the principal at the middle school level, and ultimately became assistant superintendent. And all of those roles, from teacher through assistant principal to principal, the facilities was always something that I was just drawn to. I was very fortunate in my very first assistant principal role at Carrollton High School. I was a vocational director, which now is CTAE. And one day the superintendent called me and said, or asked me, if you had the chance to put in one program, what would it be? And that one I didn't even have to think about. I right off the hand, I knew we were right across the highway from Tanner Medical Center, or Tanner Hospital at that time, and we didn't have healthcare education as one of our offerings. And I told him the healthcare pathway would be the first one we put in. So at that time we were building a new science wing. We had some additional space that became available they weren't anticipating, and so we were able to put that program in. And I was able to do that while the building was being built, and that was my first foray, I guess, so to speak, into the facilities world. And I fell in love with it. I enjoyed seeing it being built from the ground up, and then ultimately into a program that to this day is a very viable program at that high school, and one that's been very successful.
Absolutely. Well,
And
your state.
Yeah, and so that was my career. I was assistant superintendent in 3 different systems. Carrollton was a small one, up in Northeast Georgia in Habersham County, in a medium-sized system, and then ultimately where I retired from is Fayette County, which is a large system of over 20,000 kids, and so had that variety of experience, and so had experience in a small, medium, and large system. After retiring, I went to what I considered my dream retirement job, and the guys who know me know that I always said when I retire I want to be in the facilities department, the Department of Education, and helping manage the state capital outlay program. And so I was fortunate to get that job. Those jobs don't come open very often, so that kind of helped make my decision into retirement when I did. I was not unhappy in Fayette County, loved it. It's still home to us. But there was just an opportunity to join the department in a role that doesn't come open very often, maybe every 10 years when people retire from it. So went into retired in December, started work January 2nd. And for the first couple of months, I had the best job in the world, just helping school systems, and no one reported to me, and it was just it was a great job until about 3 months into it. The director who had hired me called me. We were all remote, so it was on a Teams call, and I said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm leaving the department, going back into the school system, going to be assistant superintendent in a system, and I'm going to recommend you as my replacement." And I said, "Well, didn't you want to talk to me about that first before And I'm not sure I want the responsibility, but ultimately became the director of both facility services and pupil transportation, and did that work for 4 years. And we'll talk a little bit about some changes that we made and some improvements, and had a lot of, in those 4 years, feel like we really made some advancements, and put some things into place that really would help school systems long term. And so really proud of that. And then again, just kind of out of the blue, and wasn't expecting it, had an opportunity to join a construction company, doing business development, working with school systems, and a company that I'd done a lot of work with when I was in Fayette County, Media Construction. We're out of Peachtree City. So a little over a year ago now, I joined them as a business development director for the K-12 world. And the great thing is I still scratch my itch for helping kids and providing good, clean, safe facilities for them to enjoy and to learn in. And so that was always important to me, that I didn't get stray too far away from my educational roots. And so I still get to see all my colleagues and all the folks that I've known through either the school system with State Department of Education, through the multiple conferences we are a vendor at each year. So that's a little bit of my journey and how I ended up where I am.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. And I think it's important for students to know the extensive background you have as an administrator, and obviously over facilities with the state. But so the specific law that governs facilities or capital outlay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. OCGA 20-2-260 is the law that was created back in the probably early 80s to establish a capital outlay program. The state capital outlay program in Georgia is unique across the United States. I served on a number of boards. One is a National Council of School Facilities that had representatives from around 20 states across the nation, and all of them were envious of the capital outlay program that Georgia has. And I quickly learned that it was not equal from state to state. And so when people, school systems, and I was one of them, would become frustrated with the answers that they would receive from the Department of Education, I can tell you now one of the reasons why they were so cautious and so unbending is not a good word, but not flexible in a lot of areas, was because they know what a good thing we have across the state of Georgia and how much it helps school systems, that all it would take is one or two instances getting back to the legislators and someone becoming unhappy, and with one stroke of the pen, the whole thing changes. Sure. And so that's why, so for those of you who are in those roles now, working maybe with the department, or future you work with them, just keep in mind that they want to say yes and they want to find a way to make it work. But if it's way outside the boundaries of what's in that law, it's not going to work. And and there's a reason why there. But as far as the law itself, it hasn't changed significantly over the years. I would say most of the changes have been really out of other bills that become law that then impact what's in 20-2-260. Things that come to mind right offhand, a couple of years ago, they increased the minimum bid amount requirements from $100,000 to $250,000, which means there's the Georgia Public Works construction law, and that's where the major changes have taken place over time. But for years, the minimum, if you had a project that was over $100,000, it had to be bid out according to law. Anything under $100,000 didn't have to be bid out. You had to follow your own local rules. As construction costs escalated quickly, really there wasn't much that you could do for $100,000. And so people were bidding out really small jobs just to meet the law. So we worked with legislators to get that, to make improvement there. And so now it's at $250,000. So any project that you do in the school system that's above $250,000 has to be bid out according to the Public Works. And I'll talk about what code that is a little bit later. The biggest change that was made was probably was the last thing that I worked on before I left, and that was increasing the entitlement amount from 300 million to 375 million. That was significant in that the 300 million was the amount that it had been since the inception of the program, and which was in the early to mid 80s. How that works is the entitlement amount, that 300 million, is based on need, your need in the school systems, and it's divided out based on your need across the state. So every school system, as long as you have a 5-year facility plan with the Department of Education, every system receives a portion of that entitlement.
So just so the students understand, that's the yearly entitlement.
That is correct.
And it went from 300 million
to 375 million.
That's significant.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's significant, and there were several legislators that worked very hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
So that is very important, and but those are the biggest positive changes. There are other changes that have had to be made that were not, in my eyes, were not as positive. There was a playground bill a couple of years ago that, again, I'll talk a little bit more about it. It's not really a capital outlay piece, but it is very impactful to school systems who are going to build elementary schools going forward.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
So you mentioned the local facilities plan. Obviously that's something that you have to have in place and to receive state funds. So schools sometimes have a hard time understanding local facility plan, but can you talk about that and maybe mistakes sometimes that schools make? Sure.
So the local facility plan is called the 5-year plan. And there's the software that the state uses is called COPS, C-O-P-S, Capital Outlay Program Software. It's pretty simple to know what it stands for. So within that software resides your plan for the school system, and it's going to have FTE projections. It's going to have facility needs. It's going to have system needs. And when I talk about needs, the needs are classroom instructional units. Everything is based on instructional units. And so based on your FTE, based on the number of seats that you have currently available, the number of classrooms that you have available, all of that goes into what your need is. Then it has construction needs. So if you are planning on building a new high school, new middle school, whatever it might be, that goes into that plan and under the construction tab. There's another tab for renovations, for modifications. And so every school, when it turns 20 years old, earns funding for what we refer to as RENs and mods, renovations and modifications. Renovations are things like painting, flooring, all your cosmetic stuff, new ceiling tiles, new ceiling grids, all of that, not any of the major components. Modifications are going to be your HVAC, roofing, electrical, those major components, and you earn more dollars for those because they're more expensive. So all of that is what is developing your 5-year plan. And when you ask about mistakes that I saw school districts make, I think the biggest one is because, and when I say this, you guys in the school system, you're not in the COPS program every day. And I was in it a lot when I was in the school system, and I thought I knew capital outlay until I went to work for the Department of Education, and I learned I didn't know a fraction of what I thought I knew. And what I also learned is they don't expect you to. That's why there are 5 area consultants, 5 field consultants who have hundreds of years of combined experience in education. So if you're in the Northwest Georgia, from like Bremen all the way up to the state line on that western side, Doug Suits is that consultant. Kind of in that Northeast Georgia area there is, and down to Rockdale County is Deborah Robertson. Doug's a former assistant superintendent. Deborah's a former assistant superintendent. Kind of the southeast corridor, Mickey Schuber was the consultant. He just retired. I talked to Todd Kaysen. Dr. Todd Kaysen is the facilities director now. He replaced me. He's still working to fill that role. So there's not one for those in southeast corridor right now. Kind of the middle Georgia to southwest Georgia is John Ramage. John is a retired assistant superintendent out of Clayton County, ran facilities for years. He's been with the department for 25 years now, probably. And then in South Georgia is Julie Childers. The last hire I made before I left. Julie is a former superintendent. And so they have a wealth of experience. They're there to help. So the biggest mistake that I saw systems make was not communicating with their consultant. Right. It wasn't putting things in there that shouldn't have been there. All of that gets corrected easily because you go through a yearly update. So where you work with the consultant and get everything cleaned up like it needs to be. The system the program is written in such that if there's something that doesn't match up, it shoots out a notification that people run, and you reconcile all of that. So you're not going to mess up anything. You're not going to make any changes that can't be undone. But the biggest thing is to keep in contact with that consultant, talk with them, let them know what you're thinking, the conversations that are going on within your system. Hey, we're talking about a new school. It may be 5 years down the road. Well, you know what? That's a 5-year plan. Right. So if you're talking about something within the next 5 years, it needs to be in that plan.
And remind me about, you mentioned the yearly review, but you also have to go through, is it every 5 years?
Every 5 years. It's really every 4 years because you do it the year that it's expiring. So so you do an annual update. That's to keep that 5 years. So let's say that it's 2000 and we're 2026 through 2031, right? So 27, 28, 29, you do an annual update. Is getting things cleaned up, making sure, hey, your consultant will call you and say, are there any changes you need to make, anything you need to add? And all of that planning helps determine when you are going to make application for your funding. I don't know that we have a question in here about that, so I'll talk a little bit about that right now. The application funding window is one time a year. That's important to know. It's July 1 to August 15. So we're July 27th right now. If your system is wanting to make application for funding, and the application works, it's always 2 years out. Right. So we're in FY. We're finishing up FY 26, right?
Right.
So FY26, you made application for FY28.
Yeah.
So now we're in FY27. So you really make an application for FY29.
Right.
So that's why the planning is so important, is because you're always going to be making application for 2 years out. And so you're in that window now to make that application. And that's how you get your entitlement dollars that have accumulated over time. I didn't mention that entitlement. You earn it every year.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to spend it every year.
Right.
You can let it accumulate and until maybe you're looking at a big job down the road. And so there again, it's just all about that forecasting and looking down the road to what you're going to do. And all of this, I know all of this is probably overwhelming to think about. So that's why I'll go back to know your consultant, know who your consultant is, have their phone number, call them, get them out. I didn't, in hindsight, I wish I would have had more conversation with them when I was in the school system roles. But that would be a big piece of advice I would have for them.
So, and you mentioned this too, I know our administrators know about FTE, but FTE is not just your QBE funding. It's obviously impactful for capital outlay, for entitlement. And so, looking at those enrollment projections. So if you're not studying those, your entitlement dollars could fluctuate, correct?
That's correct. That's exactly right. And it does. They'll do an FTE projection that is, and it does project over the next 5 years, and kind of shows whether you're projected to lose students, projected to grow students, and is it always spot on? No, but over it stood the test of time. It's pretty accurate. Into especially if you're losing students, it's showing that and how that impacts, as Dr. Hicks was saying, it does impact your funding, because if you're losing students,
right,
you're going to lose earned instructional units eventually. If you're gaining students, you're going to earn additional. So you want to make sure that your FTE is correct. That's another area that the Department of Education does manage, is the FSR, the Facility and Schools Registry, so in September, when they're knocking on your door asking you to get the superintendent to sign off on the FSR, it's important that it's signed off, and that it's correct, that it's accurate, because it impacts much more than just QBE.
And so I got to ask you this question, because I may have asked you this question once upon a time, and I knew what the answer was, but I figured I'd try when I was in the school system. So you said about instructional units. So just to clarify for everybody, capital outlay does not usually pay for football stadiums. They don't usually pay for board offices. They don't. Are you really talking about IUs? Or do we still use the term IUs?
That's right. I use that. Okay. That is correct. I'm proud of you.
Okay. All right. Just making sure.
EIUs, earned instructional units.
Oh, excuse me.
I'll give you.
I'm getting a little dated.
I'm going to give you a half point on that.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And right, athletic facilities, with the exception of gymnasiums, because you have PE in a gym, you do earn some capital outlay on it, and but like if you have, and typically, unless you're of a certain number in FTE, you don't earn 2 gyms. We occasionally do have the really large systems. We would have them earn an additional instructional unit, but for PE. But
right. Well, let me make sure they understood too, because I know sometimes it can pay for a line share of a renovation, maybe. But when you're talking about building a new high school, can you just kind of mention that the capital outlay is not intended to foot the bill for all 60 million? Well, I don't even know what a high school right now would call it. I'm sure it's
much more than 60.
Much more than 60 now. Can you kind of explain as a percentage?
Absolutely. Well, and it's even in the law that it is not intended to be a sole source of funding. It is a portion. And it has fluctuated over the years. I think initially it was roughly 50% so 50% state, 50% school system. But as we all know, over time, that percentage has gone from here to much more of the burden on the school system. And so for forever it was at 50%, but over time it had dwindled or had shifted downward to where the last few years it had been probably around 20% state funding and 80% local funding. But one thing again, and that we started having the conversations because it took legislation change along with the $375 million, the increase of $75 million. We were able to convince them to increase the reimbursement rates. Mm-hmm. And we really haven't taught the reimbursement rates. There are documents that your consultant can share with you that shows what the reimbursement rates. So you get X amount for roofing, you get X amount for HVAC, you get X amount for painting. You go on and on, all those the reimbursement rates. But they just should be approved now. It was in that 30-day window. Mm-hmm. With the board. It had initial approval, had to sit for 30 days, and now it should be updated where those rates were increased significantly because of going up to $375 million to where Dr. Kaysen told me that they got it to around 40%. So about doubled the percentage that the state was
that's good. Yeah,
matching. So but just know that it won't take effect for the application that's going on now. It'll be an application this time next year.
Right.
Because they had to get it.
The planning is so important.
That's why the planning is so important.
Multi-year out.
So I can tell you if you have a project that you are considering making an application for in this window and it can wait one more year, I would recommend you wait one more year to take advantage of the increased funding, because you won't be able to make application now, withdraw the application and make it again just to get the increased funding. You'd have to wait. But again, your consultant can talk through all of that with you as well. But so that I think that hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, it did. So, Mr. Sanders, I know these are two different things, but I kind of lumped it into one sentence. But advanced funding and low wealth grants. Can you just touch on what those are?
Sure. So advanced funding really applies to very few systems in today's the way growth is not happening. Enrollment is actually declining across the state. But there are a few systems who are growing. Jackson County is one that comes to mind. Bryan County down near Savannah is another one and I know there are a few others. But if all the stars align just right and they're growing at such a rapid pace, they can qualify for advanced funding. And basically what advanced funding is a zero interest loan. So you're borrowing against your future entitlement earnings, future allotments. So each year, let's say that you got a $10 million advanced funded loan. And so next year, if your system your allotment was your entitlement was $1.5 million, there's a ledger. They just simply take that 1.5 off of the 10 million. So now you owe 8.5 million, and that's where your allotment goes each year until you get that loan paid off.
So it's not a literal payback in dollars. It's lessening your entitlement over time.
That's right. That's right. You're not. And so, and Jackson County is building a K-12 facility that I think they're getting about $42 million somewhere. I don't know that that was the final number, but I know that was a number we were looking at one time, that they were going to earn about $42 million. Now that's of a $200 million project. So,
wow.
But that is a significant amount. I mean, this $42 million they don't have to come up with.
That's right.
So
what about low wealth?
So low wealth, there are many systems. I think it's, if I remember correctly, so there's a formula to determine if a system qualifies for low wealth, and it's based on property taxes and FTE.
Right.
And so once that formula is done, it's typically about 25 systems that qualify. And it's just a way for them to qualify for some additional funding that otherwise they wouldn't qualify for. So it helps those systems significantly.
Right.
There's also an advanced low wealth category as well, that it gives even more and even fewer systems that qualify for that. But that really helps them when they're doing some projects, that type thing.
Right.
Going back to the advanced funding, just you can always, in the same with the project specific, I said it's project specific low wealth, not advanced low wealth. Project specific low wealth, with those, you can only have one of those type applications at a time. So you can't get advanced funding and then qualify for advanced funding again in a few years. You have to get that paid off before. And again, that's in the law.
Okay.
That's written in the law.
So you can't double up.
You can't double up.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. That's probably why I had it in the same sentence. Okay.
Right.
That makes more sense now. So the owner, a lot of times you might be inclined, you obviously hire an architect, you hire a contractor, however you do those services, but the owner leading the project, how important is that?
That is, that would be my number one item on the priority list, because you're going to have architects who do the school work. They know the school business. Your general contractors, most of them that are in the school business, they've built schools for a long time. The company I work for, we built schools for 39 years. We understand it. And if you let those two entities, especially in the planning stages and getting ready to go, you let them drive the ship, then you're going to have a Taj Mahal that you may or may not be able to afford.
Yeah.
And so, and I've had this conversation with superintendents, especially in some of the smaller systems that don't have a staff to manage it for them.
Right.
The superintendent is everything.
Right.
And I have one in particular. He was trying to do a project specific low wealth project. He had a very limited amount of money to spend. The state was going to put in a significant amount, and he knew what he could work with. And I went down and met with him, and he was talking about his architect. And my architect keeps telling me, I need to think outside the box. I need to think outside the box. He said, Mr. Sanders, I don't have the money to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I looked him dead in the eyes and said, well, sir, the only option you have is to take control of those meetings, and you let the architect know that you're in charge.
Right.
And this is the direction we're going. Here are the parameters. You work with me to get me where I need to be. I can't afford to think outside the box. And so those are conversations you have to have. And so when I say you lead the project, school system lead the project, in my opinion, the way I feel, the way I work, it was my job to get us to where the vision of the superintendent was. And that took a lot of most of the time, my superintendents, they weren't in those meetings. They trusted me to run them and take care of them. And, but I always made sure I knew where my superintendent was, what their expectations were before I went in and had those conversations with my architect and my contractors.
Well, and obviously, not saying they intentionally did this, but they're paid on a percentage.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, if your amount comes in at a higher amount, if it's there's, I don't say that on purpose over engineering or over design, but there's some efficiencies there that would help the school system's bottom line because they are paid on a percentage. So it's important to have a good relationship up front, like you're saying, to say this is what we can do.
And that's where it really comes down to trust. Again, I was not an architect. I wasn't a contractor at that time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it did come down to trust. And then over time, I did learn more about the games that are played, and there are. I mean, all of those guys we're in business to make money, and
right.
You know, it's just I didn't want. I'm fine with them making money. I wasn't going to build their pools and all the extra stuff that they get.
Yeah, we're educators.
That's exactly right.
We live in a different world, but
world.
You kind of talked about the reimbursement rate compared to actual construction, but anything else about that, about the gap? But I think you really kind of got into
I think that covered it. Again, it's just making sure that everybody is being good stewards of those dollars and doing the things that are right. Because again, I'll go back to what I said in question number one. All it takes is one major something happen and blow up, and the right, or however you look at it, right or wrong legislator gets involved, and one swipe of the pen, the whole thing changes, and we don't want that to happen.
No. Too many kids have benefited from the capital outlay program and the instructional units that we've been providing for years. We don't need to mess that up. But the playground accessibility, you kind of alluded to it. Do you want to kind of touch on that?
Sure. Yeah, that is one that is a great example of, while it's not in the 20-2-260 that we referred to earlier on, because playgrounds they are not funded at all through capital outlay. You don't earn one penny of capital outlay dollars. And I'm not sure that the legislators who put this into implementation, I don't think they really realize that. I tried to tell them, but sometimes I don't know if they didn't understand or just wasn't listening to what I had to say, because they had something. And look, no one can argue that this is a bad thing, that this is not a good thing. It is a good thing, right? And you want all kids to have equal access to playgrounds. So it's all about ADA, being ADA compliant. The problem that I had with it is if you go in and read the law, and I wish I should have looked it up. I can't remember what the actual code number is, but if you get a chance and find it, read it. So what I did when it got on my radar, no one ever had a conversation with me. I tell you where I learned it was in a GSBA update, those morning emails that they send.
Right.
And I saw it and I was like, what in the world is this? And so got to looking at it, pulled up the bill, read what was in the bill. And I just happened to know of a school system at that time who had just had built a new elementary school, and they had done a really nice big playground. And I'd gone up to look at it and had all the sensory equipment, all the stuff that what they were talking about in the law. So I sent that bill to my contact in that system and asked, will you take a look at this bill and call me back tomorrow and tell me if the playground that you just put in would meet the letter of the law. And at that time, I knew what they had spent on that playground. And so he called me back the next day and he said, Mike, no, it would not, that playground would not. He had spent $850,000 on that playground.
Wow.
And so you're talking about a playground that if you built from July, you've got until July of 27 to get your elementary schools out of the ground.
Yeah.
Because anything built after July of 27, July 1 of 27, has to have the ADA compliant playgrounds that meet this law. And by that time, it's going to be over $1 million to put it in. And the biggest problem that I have with it, and I told the representative this, that it's a one size fit all. They didn't do it based on FTE. So it doesn't matter if you're building an elementary school for 400 or 500 kids, or you're building an elementary school for 1,800 kids. You've got to put in, at minimum, you've got to put in this size playground. So it's really going to hurt the rural systems.
Yeah.
That they may not have $1 million.
That's a lot.
For them is significant, and there's no state funds.
Yeah.
Period. And so those were the major issues I have with it. I was hoping they would tweak it this year. They didn't. So it is in law. And as of July 27, if you're building an elementary school, you have to meet the letter of the law. And now I don't know if anybody I don't know the playground police are going to be out there, but that's something you guys have to.
That's a whole other story.
That's a whole other story.
Well, Mr. Sanders, thank you. I guess one final question, unless there's something else you think of, but if again, a lot of our students are assistant principals may or may not aspire to central office, maybe different roles that they might do. But if I love this area like you did, you recognized early on that you love the financial side just because I know you, but the financial side and the facilities side, if someone wants to get well-versed or kind of position themselves to deal with some of this in their career, what would you recommend?
Sure. Earlier in your career that you start working in facilities, the better. It may be managing the custodians. Now, that doesn't sound like a glamorous job, and it's not. But that was my start, really, outside of the example I gave earlier about the CTAE program. But anything that you can do, that you can volunteer for, just to get more knowledge, serving on committees. I used when I was assistant superintendent for scoring committees for bids. I would use folks from the schools, principals, assistant principals, various people like that. So get involved. I would also say that this is going to be there's several answers in this, but know the law, the Public Works Construction Law. I haven't had time to really talk a lot about that, but it's OCGA 3691-20, 3691-21, and 22. Those guide the Public Works Construction Law. And so as you're bidding jobs out, you need to make sure you're following that law. I didn't realize when I was in the school system, I didn't realize how important that was. And I'll be honest and transparent. I didn't know the law like I should. When I got to the department, that's when I had to learn the law and really help systems in working through and making sure that they were meeting the law. So make sure you're at least familiar with those laws. I go back to knowing your facilities consultant, know them where you can call them at any point in time. And then finally, I'll make a plug for the GSSA, Georgia School Superintendents Association facilities class. That is it's a three. It's held in January, February, March. It's a day and a half in January, a day and a half in February, a day and a half in March. That gives you an opportunity to get with your colleagues from across the state. I teach the class. Last year, I think I had 33 participants from all over the state, and I had superintendents, I had assistant superintendents, I had principals, I had facilities folk. Finance folks, procurement officers. It's a little bit of everything. Facility directors, and I did when I was in your roles. When I was assistant superintendent, I went through the facilities class, and so I was a student, and that's where I think it even validated even more of what I wanted to do long term. And so it's a great way to network. It's a great way to, I really take a heavy emphasis on the capital outlay program. We dive deep, we pull it up, show you, so that last piece is one I think is very important. Especially if you're going to be a superintendent one day, you need to know, what's going on in the facilities, because those facilities greatly impact that instruction that's going on in the classroom.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mr. Sanders. Really appreciate your willingness to share your expertise and background with the students, and go Wolves.
My pleasure. Go Braves /Wolves.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.